Man, how's everyone doing, man? Happy Tuesday. Is it really Tuesday? One second. Let me grab a beer. I'm back. Sorry, y'all. I forgot. So I had some beer. That's a Christmas gift in the house. So here we go. A little beer. Anyhow, I hope everyone's having a good week, man. I had all last week off because, well, I guess because I was on holiday break. So, that's really cool, man. My work gave 5 bonus like PTO days to people, and I was able to use that for my trip I had planned before I was actually that I had planned before I even accepted the job. Um, so that was cool. Really enjoyed that. Now I'm like in the heat of studying. It's actually what I was doing before this, and it was what I was doing last night. I've been studying nonstop, just trying to get ramped up on all the new technologies and all the things I haven't worked on a ton in recent years. And one thing that's different about how I study now, and I'll talk a little bit about this before we start getting into people's questions. But one thing that's different about how I study now is I study by this thing of reference. I study by reference. What does that actually mean? Well, when I was first starting my career as a sort of a junior developer, there's a lot more memorization. There's a lot more X does Y. Um, but what you'll find again and again as you sort of progress is that the you don't really learn new things. I mean, you do, but like generally speaking, when you're going from one front end framework to another, one programming language to another, or one implementation to another, what you are looking for when you study early on is just to memorize what something does. Um, and then nowadays, I study by reference where I understand core concepts and what they do. Um, so like I've recently been looking into GraphQL, for instance, and GraphQL. I've always understood the overlying like theory of GraphQL. It's a unique way to to do a query for a single endpoint that you just write more complex queries as you go, right? That's the basic idea. So what do I do in a situation like that? Well, I go watch like a 4-hour tutorial. I don't actually code it anymore. I could, like typically in the past, what I would do is probably watch that tutorial, then code it and whatnot. Now what I do is I watch like a 4-hour tutorial. Jordan's Cadet donated $3. Thanks, man. It's rare I ever get any any God, what do they call these things? The I forget the name. But I appreciate that, Jordan's. I think it's super chats. I think that's what it's called. With the big old thumbs up here. I think I can pin it. Can I pin it? No, I don't know what to do. But thanks, man. But yeah, so now what I do is I sort of watch these things and I take some mental notes, and sometimes I just take sticky notes of some words, like to remind me that this is a thing, to refer back to it. So that's it. And it's because most of the time these concepts are nothing new. They've just muscle memory that you go, and that's why like documentation exists more than anything else. Is if you think about it, no one's actually expecting you to go and memorize every method that JavaScript does, like in depth, or any programming language or any framework or whatnot. But what the documentation exists for is for you to reference it later on. It's very rare for people to actually learn from documentation. The only time you're learning from documentation is oftentimes when something's in a beta and they just launched. Someone asked me like, "Hey, how come TypeScript got so popular recently?" I think we were talking about the Scrimba live stream, and part of my answer to that, there's a lot more to it than that, was that the so the what do you call it? The reason that some of that gets more popular is that people have built things. It's easier to learn. You're going in a direction in which other people have already found the hiccups and resolved these issues. And so it's just one of those things where um that continues to grow. So the way I learn nowadays is significantly different than the way I learned before. Now that's also because as you go and you progress your career, it's much harder to go and build some of these higher level concepts as you progress, right? Like DevOps is a good example I give people. Like it's really hard to get quote unquote good at DevOps when you aren't working for like an enterprise company, because like it's what are you deploying, right? Like it's a strange thing. um I don't know, man. It's but yeah, so anyhow, you guys got any questions, man? Enough about the topic of the day. um oh, you know what, I don't know if you guys see that box back there, but my mom sent me a Christmas gift, and it's actually fire, man. So even though I have the massage chair, this thing works much better on the feet. It's a You put your feet in, and it's heated, and it has some air, and it has some twirlers in here. Dude, it's fantastic. How's work? I'm excited to do my first ticket. So like the first week I did onboarding, second week I was out. So this is my third week, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna start working like writing some actual code this week. So I'm excited for that. I've it's you know what, man, I'm excited because this is gonna be like the first project I've worked in a very long time in which I'm gonna learn something new. Like usually you're building e-commerce platforms, you're you are back office tools, those types of things, but different direction entirely. So pretty excited about that. What key concepts should one work on before starting a JavaScript framework? Well, I think it's important to know where JavaScript ends and the DOM manipulation ends, and the framework begins. One of the things that always upset me when I'd be interviewing candidates would be when they were confused about where TypeScript. Hey, I'm gonna put some music on in the background. Please tell me if it plays, because if it does, I have to not have it. So it's starting now. Um, but can you guys hear that music? Uh, so but one of the things that upset me when I'd be interviewing candidates is they wouldn't understand. Not really. Let me turn it down just a little bit. Sometimes they wouldn't understand where TypeScript began and JavaScript ended, and that really upset me. Because to me it's in that time definitely looking for people who are JavaScript devs, right, quote unquote. So it's kind of an unacceptable thing, but I kind of feel the same way when you move into other frameworks. So generally speaking, pretty fast. I think there's really no reason to do manual DOM manipulation. It's not a realistic circumstance. And like the concepts are pretty similar. Like, what are you doing a lot of times when you're actually working with the framework? You're selecting something in the UI, you're modifying the UI, either updating text, applying styles, rendering one thing, rendering another thing, doing two-way data binding. A lot of these things you can do much cleaner in a framework, but the concepts, and this goes back to the earlier statement about referencing, the concepts are the same. That's why some of the front end devs, like certain organizations, don't care if you've ever worked in the front end framework of their choice, right? Because you look at Angular, you look at React, you look at Vue. What do they all have? They all have functionality that's 99% the same. All the major functionality: lazy loading, routing, HTTP requests, two-way data binding, forms. Like, all those frameworks do the same thing, different nuances, but generally speaking, they all have a way to implement the same thing. So some of you may actually be thinking that my work sent me this shirt. Not the case. This is from the very first hackathon I went to. I still have it, and amazingly, I actually still fit into it. So this is like 5 years ago, very first hackathon I went to. I was super stoked, man. I love me some swag. People think I go and speak at conferences and go to conferences to go and better my skill set and network. Not true. I go for a free t-shirt. That's it. But yeah, man. Do I still attend conferences? I actually just I'm probably going to speak at a digital one. I sent a follow-up email today to do a talk about remote life. By the time the conference has come combined, I'll have worked over 2 years remotely. Which has its pros and its cons. How often do devs actually use fetch post? Whenever you need to. Matter of fact, GraphQL is nothing but posts. That's all GraphQL does, is it does a post. Kind of counterintuitive if you follow REST standards. I would probably say that's a GET. It's actually a post because you're querying the database. What's that noise? That's my foot massager. Can you guys hear it? Is it the little? Is it super noticeable? Like I should turn it off, or I'll turn it off if it's too noticeable. When you're in grind mode, do you ever deal with the issue that anything that isn't part of the grind is a waste of time? Especially important things like friends and family. So here's the deal. When do you stop grinding? That's a real question. My previous relationship would have probably failed no matter what, but I think it failed sooner because I never stopped grinding. Like, hey, when you're delivering pizzas and you grind to you grind yourself to a decent, full-time salary of 50, 60,000 from $10 an hour, right? With health benefits, got an apartment. Okay, well, apartment's not good enough. Keep grinding for a house. Get a 6-figure salary, get a house. You're doing better than, you're making twice the income of the average family as a single person, right? It's not enough. Keep grinding. It's all about where, I have no problem with people putting friends and family on hold. I really don't, because I think you have to make sacrifices. I think that's an acceptable sacrifice. I'm not saying forever, but I think what happens is that we as software engineers have the good ability to focus in super intently. And if you're not careful, you can do it for years at a time. I've done this, and there's something I'm trying to avoid like the plague. Like I recently started seeing somebody, and one of the things I said to her, I'm like super kind of uncomfortable because like I know I'm kind of a workaholic, but I'm trying not to be, and and you know, we were spending some time together. I had to work, and like I felt so like out of it. I wasn't working that much, but even so, I'm like kind of neurotic about it now because like it's been an issue in the past, which is fine. I think I should be neurotic about it, but also, one thing I said to her was like, "Hey, if there's ever an issue, just be like super direct with me, because like I'm not gonna pick on subtleties, and it's not that I can't pick up subtleties. It's that I get so laser focused on my objective, and it's one of the strengths. It's one of the reasons that I'm a good software engineer. It's because I can zone out for 14 hours straight and work on something. And barely eat or go to the bathroom. Like it's not hard for me. It's one of the reasons why I went and visited my brother. I can do a 17-hour drive in one sitting with no stop. It's not healthy. That's the problem. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So my point is this: is that I have no problem with people putting their friends and family on hold if it makes sense, if it's for the greater good. The problem is at some point it no longer is, and you can't justify it. For me, when I bought the house and I had money in the bank and things like that, there was absolutely no reason that for the minimal amount of return that I should have gone and kept working 100-hour weeks. And in fact, the second I took a break and I was able to refresh and recharge myself, and I got out of grind mode, after being in it for like 4 years, that was when the greatest thing in my career happened. Going and working at Amazon. That's biggest career accomplishment hands down so far. I'm only in my third week, but like that was a result of me getting out of grind mode, still working towards something, still growing, but not you can't be in fight or flight for years at a time. That's what grind mode is. Grind mode is you saying I am in fight mode, and this is me and life. If it's my career, me and my career, it's to the death. I plan to win. That's what grind mode really is, except on like a less physical mode. It's a mentality, and it'll mess you up if you stay in it too long, right? Imagine that you just have your adrenaline going at 100%, right? That's not healthy. And the grind mode is the same thing. So there's nothing wrong with, not going out on the weekends with your friends, or, talking to them less, texting them less. I had to do all that to go and learn to code because my friends weren't software engineers. So I had to go get new friends who were aspiring devs and work with them, right? And grow my social circle. And I had to not go to family birthdays and dinners because I was working or doing whatever it is. That's okay. It's all about balance, right? It doesn't have to be equality. It doesn't have to be equal, but it's all about balance. I love the idea of making more money than the average family. For some reason, it makes me feel good. I mean, all it will get you is fun and security. Security and fun are definitely worth something, though. But don't think money's going to make you happy. I'd rather make less money in a Honda Civic with the girl of my dreams than be driving around solo in a Lambo. And I think most people would. And it's easy to say that, right? Like I think it's definitely like most of the time with people who are doing well, they'll tell you money isn't everything. It's something though. But it's not gonna make you happy. And it, I agree with that sentiment, but also I get like, oh, you're on the other side of the coin, right? When all you're thinking about is paying your bills and like getting through your day, of course, you think money's going to make you happy. And it will, to that point. Like living paycheck to paycheck will definitely increase your happiness because it's going to lower your stress levels. But once you're there, there's not like a huge jump. Nazareth, $5. Thanks for your genuine answer. I think it would be a good topic for your podcast. Yeah, I think we have something coming up on this. I think I did one on mental health. I think we have one on mental health, and we talk about that a bit. How do you balance the grind and enjoying your life? You know, I had to break before I could do it. And even now I work more than the average person, but I don't work well like I did. That was killing me, man. Uh um I think if I was to say I think the goal needs to be not so singularly focused. Um and like you know, I think that's the goal. It's like you just have to understand that there's more than one objective. Tyler Carroll says, I got so hungry to become a software engineer that I didn't even enjoy the holidays due to family engagements. I couldn't study. Is this a bad thing? I never thought I could be so driven. I don't think it's a bad thing. I'll be the first one to tell you, like, is it a bad thing that this holiday you wanted to study more and work more than you want to spend with your family? I don't think so. Now, if you're in that same mentality 5 years from now, absolutely. But with that intensity, with that sacrifice, you'll go and become a software engineer. The key is, this is the key, man. The key is not to keep pushing. Like, it's, I talked about this in my my life update video I did a little bit back, is that like everything feels like a final boss because it's so big and epic, but it's really just the next goal. And the key is really in between those goals to take breathers and understand that they're not going anywhere, and to somehow be content. I struggle with being content. Um, you know, um, and it's something I'm working on, and like the right person in my life will make me content about certain things and like allow me to take a breath. So am I a super big shot? No. Um oh, it turned off. I thought I set this for 30. But you know, but you also have to find somebody who's willing to snap you out of it. I think that's the thing that really was my downfall, is not having anybody in my life that would say, hey, enough is enough. And like in theory, yeah, you should be able to do that for yourself. But like when you're in a partnership or you're hand in hand, sometimes you need that other person just to bring it up to you. Um, what do you think is the best resource for finding your first job? I feel like recruiters, online job sites always have listing that require 3 to 5 years experience, meetups, and just applying for tons of jobs. Recruiters really are only going to come into your life once you have experience, usually. I mean, you have to remember, recruiters are getting paid by bringing devs on, and there's not a lot of companies that are going to pay for junior level devs for a recruiter, right? What are some alternatives to meetups nowadays? I mean, in Florida, I think meetups are still happening. I don't think they're as prevalent. Studying by reference, yeah, making note of things rather than actually memorization is really the goal here. Are you mentioning the reducer function in state management libraries? I usually like to write my own state management. I haven't been really impressed with state management libraries. I think I can do a better job. Tyler, I'm telling you that you have 3 to 4 hours a day every day until you get a job, and a mentor is perfect, right? Uh, But yeah, man, grind mode's scary. It's something I don't want to go into anymore. Would you say you're passionate about software engineering? Absolutely. You can't do the things I do without being passionate, right? I build projects. I've my YouTube channel, podcast courses. Just launched the introduction clean code course on Scrimba. Got an introduction unit testing coming out. Like these are all things that I mean the money from like these things were good at one time, but they're not exceptional nowadays. Like I'm glad they're there. Passive income. You're never gonna hear me talking crap about passive income. It's a lot of work to get that passive income going. How should you prepare for coding interviews? Well, I have the 100 algorithm challenge that's down in the description below. You could take. I've met people who are not passionate but are still doing really well. I don't think you have to be super passionate to be a software engineer. I think it helps. Eric and I were talking about this in one of our podcast episodes that's coming out about how like it's kind of obscene that like the industry requires you to be passionate. I happen to be passionate about it, but I find it a little bit offensive because like I don't think it's fair. I think people should have lives outside of software. I think it's unhealthy. I think it's unhealthy for people to be as obsessed about software as I am. I truly do. I have had trouble connecting with people because of what I do outside of work, and I don't do anything else. And like I'm working on that. How long did it take you to get good with fetch and promises? Well, after I understood APIs and the intent of promises, like maybe a weekend. Fetch is a I think it's probably the window API to be honest. Is anyhow, it's a way for you to do API calls with promises. Promises are an asynchronous way of communicating. Have you considered games like Chess for Breezers? I started reading. Yeah, game dev, man, it's too stressful. How long have you been working as a software engineer? Somewhere between 4.5 years, around there. Is there something different you would have done differently in path to becoming a dev? Yeah, I would have dropped out of college years earlier, and I would have bought some Udemy courses. I did everything off free resources. I would just use Fetch. I don't think people should use Axios anymore. Axios doesn't use, at least at the time, this is like 2 years ago, Axios was built in such a way that it couldn't use some of the more later HTTP protocols, which caused issues if you wanted to do some fancier stuff and faster stuff. I always tell people to build a progressive web app because it'll make you stand out. So a progressive web app is a series of technologies where essentially it requires a couple things. One, for a page to be responsive. One, for a service worker to be installed, and a manifest file. And basically what that allows you to do is you can do things like offline caching. So if you already downloaded the app, the app being the browser, the Chrome extension, you can only add it as like an app to your phone. but also it can have an offline mode. "4 years and already have a house listed for a Joe." I did that 2 years ago, son. Honestly, buying a house was like always a goal of mine, but I kind of fell into it. I remember looking at what it would cost me to buy a house. I remember looking at rentals. I went to so many different rentals. I just wanted a nice apartment. In my entire life, I'd never had like a nice apartment. I always had the low end sort of thing, like the I don't know, the budget apartments. Even though I had a couple extra rooms at one, and when I looked at the nicer apartments, it was like just as expensive as a monthly payment on a house. So I bought a house. That was it. That was it. I just like I couldn't grasp spending that much, like to get how much more a month it was going to cost me. I don't necessarily. I think people should have more thought out ideas than that. Why is recursion so difficult to grasp? It's just like anything else with programming. You have to reprogram your brain on how these things work. You have to understand how things bubble up. Did I pay off the house? No. I am about $110,000 shy of paying off my house if I cashed out some stocks and things like that. I'm considering it though. Traditional logic would tell you not to do it, but I don't like debt. Traditionally, what most financial advisors would tell you, by the way, not a financial advisor, this is my summary and my understanding, is that you don't want to pay your house off. Instead, you'll get better returns in the stock market and things like that. And from a number standpoint, that's probably accurate. It doesn't take into consideration risk as much as I think you should. Also, in my circumstance, I feel much better having a paid off investment property than having a investment property that I owe money on. Will I be a millionaire someday? It's looking like it. One day, if I'm smart. It's actually relatively. If you invest, I was reading a book on. So if you invest in your 401k and get like a 11% return, and let's say you just make 50,000, put 15% in for 30 years, you should have like 3.3 or 3.5 million dollars if you just leave it there and don't touch it. So, but that's over 30 years, right? But my point being is that by retirement age, if you have consistently invested, you will, and only of that $3 million, like 400,000 of it is basically your own money. The rest is compound interest and your interest making money, right? So like in the long term, if you are straightforward and you save your money and you invest and you don't touch it, then you'll be in a great financial position in the long term, right? That's why it's so important to like start investing in things like your 401k very early on. My investing strategy, any take on Angular? I love Angular. Angular is my favorite framework. House ain't for me. I want that condo life. Yeah. I mean, a house as a person in a relationship with pets much better than a condo, but if it's just me, probably condo. I'm still writing my book. Not right now. I am. End of the year, it'll be out. How old am I? I'm 33. How nice was the first apartment we were in Florida? I mean, it was nicer than the apartment that I had in California, but not by much. My investing strategy, I basically buy tech companies and S&P 500 ETFs. Not a financial advisor. This is what I put my money into, though. Not a financial advisor. It's just what I do. Not a financial advisor. You like Angular material? No. I don't use UI libraries. UI I build UI libraries. I don't use them. We're all millionaires depending on the currency we use. Hey. What do you think of more static web frameworks like Next.js and Gatsby? I haven't had a chance to use them or really understand them. They don't necessarily sound like they just sound like server-side render things that aren't going to have a lot of interactivity. And if it's all about, does it serve the purpose? Have I worked for Fang? Currently working for Fang. So yes, not in the past though. Currently working. At least I hope not. Oh my goodness. What do you think is the best way to learn? Building. Watch a video, then build. Where do you see augmented reality in the future? You know, augmented reality and virtual reality have been around for so long, but have they transformed our lives? And my argument would be no. It's not like these things are new, man. They've been here in various forms. They're getting better. But it's not like they're new. How long did it take you to get a job from writing your first line of code? Well, I was in school first, but when I dropped out and I started studying full time, when I started studying, it took me about 7.5, 8 months, or 9 months to get my actual first dev job from when I dropped out and just started studying full time. All right, enough of that. Ooh. My first job salary was $62,000. They offered me $5,000 cash. That would have been for relocation, but had a 2-year payback period. So essentially, I'd be there, or they would bump me to $67K after 3 months, and I took that one because I thought that was better long-term play. What was your first dev job? I worked at a company that they were building a dev department. They worked in the defense contracting space, and so specifically having to do with like training exercises. And so we built software around that and how to track things, analytics, all the stuff that you would expect. If a company lets you choose a language for a programming interview, which one would you choose? Probably JavaScript, TypeScript. Really, it's all about pseudocode. They don't care what language you write in as long as you can. They're not gonna actually write it. It's all about logic, right? So pseudocode usually will do just fine. Do you still think employers are overly biased towards CS grads from elite universities? I saw that particularly in London where I worked. I think the job market in Europe is slightly different than the job market in the US. I can tell you that I'm probably an outlier. Like I don't know the stats on like how many developers work at like a FANG company that have 0 degrees. Like not even like an English degree, just 0 degrees. If I had to guess, it's probably in the low single digits. Like it's so like my experience in this aspect might be different than somebody else's. But also I'm back to the grind. I sacrificed everything. Everything was on the chopping block for me to go and become a good developer. I don't know that it should have been, but it was. So, but yeah, there's always going to be a bias. Will truck drivers and airline pilots be replaced by automation? To some degree, I'm sure. Not anytime soon. Thoughts on Tata Consultancy? I haven't heard of it. Do you think Python will be used as a language? I think it's the fastest growing language. Thank you for sharing my JavaScript Miss blog article. No problem, man. The feeling on being Amazon from the interior versus the exterior. Nothing really to say other than I'm very excited and, just getting my feet wet still. But I like what I see so far. Do I still use the Essential Oil Diffuser? I actually have one in the bedroom. I don't run it too often. Maybe when I start meditating again, I'll start running again. Seeing them come through at work, the self-taught and bootcamp people do not do as well as the interview process. Someone with more theory and exposure. Yeah, it comes in waves for me. I've had the problem I've had is usually I get the bootcamp and the self-taught people who are more practical in nature, and like especially earlier on in your career, because so like once you're a senior dev, you're self-taught no matter what. Is how I consider it, because like you're gonna have to be good, right? And sometimes I felt like sometimes with certain CS majors, this is going to be a generalization. I don't mean it to be, but I've probably done like 100 interviews, and there's definitely a portion of people who just think they get their degree and they can stop learning until they get the job, and it's really hard to get that first junior level role. So usually when I'd be interviewing, I more so so like 70% of people cheat in college is last study I showed. And cheat frequently, I think, was the stat. And so it's not uncommon for people to have degrees and not really have earned the degrees, I guess. Like I think back to this one CS class. There's who I think back to this one class. This first programming class, and we were like maybe a third of the way through the quarter, and everyone about 2/3 of the class handed in the same assignment, and you knew it was the same assignment because like for those of you who have ever been in a class, sometimes you would do like a comment at the top that say your name and like the date, right, or the name and the assignment, and everybody, all those people that cheated, they forgot to change the name at the top. So not only were their solutions almost identical, they forgot to change the comment at the top. And so 2/3 of the class handed in the same assignment. I didn't, but it was, I mean, my teacher blew up. My professor blew up about this. I haven't looked too much into assembly. Yeah. You're definitely right though about people not being able to problem solve. People often ask like, why do we need to practice algorithm problems, right? Like, I say traditional data structure algorithm problems I don't really care about. Like, but I would ask like FizzBuzz and like reverse a string in these interviews, and I think, I mean, this is a while back. Obviously not my current role. I'm not doing interviews, but it would be God, there might be a 1 in 20 chance that someone could do FizzBuzz and reverse a string. I know some of you think I'm full of crap. Like it's because it seems kind of silly. But I mean, I've had to be where like I end the interview because you could see the person is like, you go into like counselor mode, because you don't want anyone to have a bad experience, but they get overwhelmed, right? In those certain, so it's sometimes getting overwhelmed. So Um, so it's these things happen, but yeah, for anyone else in the chat, Dylan teaches you how to do fizz blows and reverse the string of 100 algorithm challenge. That's true. Uh, has landing a job at Amazon given you even less incentive to finish your degree? So when I went back for the second time, that was sort of the nail in the coffin for that. I yeah, I think so. I was joking with my dad the other day about this, and and I'm very open with my parents about my life, whether it's my dating life, whether it's my financial life, like all that sort of stuff. And you know, I think the last job at PwC was like when he was like, "Oh, Dylan," actually, like it was the first company he had or first organization he heard of that like he's like, "Oh, I know them. That's some real shit." Like like uh so and then you know, going to Amazon was like one of those things, at least for him, where he's like, "Oh, like okay, so they're starting to watch things that I put out there now. Like they're like slowly becoming fans of what it is I do because I like I share some of the things on my YouTube channel, or not on my YouTube channel, but on my Facebook group that I do projects I do and whatnot to promote them and just sort of create a feed so people can see like what I'm up to. They're starting to check it out. So, you know, my I don't think my dad thinks I'll be starving to death anytime soon, but I do think the last organization and this current one, he sort of has an idea that like, oh, like because I mean, from a very practical standpoint, my career's gone exceptionally well in 4 years, right? It's just been like this, including the side projects, whole deal. But like, but now it's like, it's one of those things where they can see it. Does that make sense? Like, I knew a couple jobs back that like my career was going well because I was putting time in. I knew exactly what it sort of took to succeed. Like, did I think I was going to be here? No, but I knew that I was headed in a proper direction. But now, going and working at there, um, because they're not developers, right? Like, like they don't know any, they don't know about Scrimba or anything, but they do know PwC, they do know Amazon, and they do know that like that's some real stuff, and so in their mind, right? And so now they're starting to see like, oh, maybe does it. They don't know you're a celebrity. I'm definitely not a celebrity. I'm definitely not a celebrity. Uh, um, yo, low key though, if any of you ever see me on a date and you recognize me, come up. It's just so I can feel like, I'll be like, oh, baby, don't worry. It's cool. Whatever. I'll play it off. I'll play it off. You'll make me feel like a stud, dude. Be like, who's that? I don't know, man. Sometimes people just come up and they say hi and they're fans. So I don't know what I'd say. At least not with the date. Uh, it happened. It's happening a little bit more frequently. I went out to celebrate dinner and happened with my buddy, and he's like, "Who are those?" He's like, "People just walk up to you." I was like, "Sometimes." Like, uh, yeah. It usually only happens at like conferences or meetups. like places where there's definitely meant to be devs. uh, like, oh my god, it's Dylan. Yeah, the first couple times it's I'm still not super comfortable with it. Um, but like the first time someone asks to take a picture with you that you don't know, that's where it gets a little strange. Just and it's not strange. It's just it'll catch you off guard. I'm very approachable though, for the most part, um, especially for people with software. Um, yeah, it's but yeah, so yeah, there is a you know, a lot of these guys I become friends with, like we connect through Instagram or LinkedIn and whatnot because like we like the same stuff. Like, why wouldn't we be friends? um, but there's this young couple that I chat with on occasion. Um, that like the dude was he was a fan and he was super nervous, and so he's kind of this. I was speaking at a conference and he came to like see my talk and see the conference, and like he just sort of did like one of these across the room, and then like I walked up to talk to him. Basically, his girlfriend talked the whole time. He was just super nervous, but they're cool people, man. Um, a mouse trail. What's a mouse trail? But yeah, so I think so. Back to the weird celebrity comment. Definitely not in that category. But they are starting to. It's funny how they gravitate towards certain things. Like I had an article, top 100 people, top 100 people to top 100 dev software engineers and so on and so on. Someone did a survey of like 1,500 people or something like that, and people voted for who are people you should follow. And I was like ranked like, I don't know, 70th or something. But like Elon Musk was on the list and like Bill Gates, just like ridiculous people. But it's top 100 and it's just who people voted for. But I got on this list and I shared it because I thought it was kind of cool. And someone asked me about it. And that's probably one of the things that like they gravitated towards more than anything else. Just a simple top 100 list. But it's like someone's Medium article or something like that. But that I don't. Same thing with my work, by the way. I shared this on LinkedIn, and it was like got shared at my work and things like that. Where like, yeah, it's cool. Like, here's the thing, it's cool. I just didn't think people were gonna care all that much. But yeah, they shared it at my work. People were talking about it. It's like, It's just strange things people gravitate towards sometimes. Like, how come people aren't talking about my introduction clean code course like that? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of buddies who do C#.net, and they love it. But they also did it in college. It's the only thing they've ever worked in. I've worked in a little bit in the past. I don't think it's anything special, if you're asking me. I think the fact of the matter is that you have to use .NET with it to pretty much get anything done bothers me. But it's well maintained. But they love it. I mean, pretty much you're just going to do backend development. So if you want to build microservices and APIs, that's pretty much it. I mean, yeah, create projects on GitHub, man. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, C# the language is very similar to TypeScript. I mean, Microsoft maintains C#.net, and they built TypeScript. So who do you think built it? Blazor with WebAssembly is supposed to be good. Oh my god, man, you're sounding like these guys, man. You're my old coworkers. How's Blazor doing nowadays, man? .NET 5? Jeez, did they just go up to 3? Um, yeah. I mean, are there any? I mean, who's actually using Blazor in production? That's what I want to know. Because, like, I think this is a meme. If you want to know my current stance, like, I'm not saying it's not being built. I'm not saying that they're going, but it's it's the typical problem with like a lot of Silicon Valley startups is there's no demand for this. What do I mean by that? C# devs, by their very nature, don't want to work in the front end. They don't. It's a C# front end framework. They don't want to work in the front end. They don't. That's why they're C#.net devs. They wanted to build microservice and APIs. The front, okay, here, I'm going to blow your mind with something right now. The front end isn't difficult to work in because of JavaScript. It's difficult to work in because of CSS. This is the truth. CSS is the Achilles heel of most software engineers. That's why that's why people, and not only that, Bootstrap has made it worse, and these front end frameworks have made it worse because people, it's not about saving time. They just don't know how to do them. I have no problem with front end frameworks and component libraries. It's if you know what you're doing. Like, I don't think people should use component libraries until they can build a component library. Because what ends up happening is think about it in a different context. Let's say you're learning to read and write, but you never learned how to form sentences, but you did learn how to copy and paste sentences off the web to get your idea across. It's CSS that pushes people away. CSS is still going to be the problem. So it's not JavaScript. JavaScript's not the issue. People like to complain about JavaScript because it has some quirks. JavaScript only has about 10 things that you have to absolutely know about why it's a little strange. And especially in the last 5 years, every year they've been, ever since like 2015, 2014, when they did the big ES6 update, they've been more standardizing JavaScript to be to function and behave similarly. You know what I'm trying to say, to other programming languages. So, yeah. So, also the front end tools sucked 10 years ago. Now we have things like Webpack and Babel. Things will handle browser compatibility, compile. You have frameworks that are going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. I mean, JavaScript can do a lot of all the same stuff if you want to do. I mean, a PWA will run on anything for the most part. So, and that takes you about not 15 minutes, maybe an hour to set up. So, Am I vibrating? I bounce and shake my legs a lot. All right. Any last questions before we call it a live stream here, guys? I'm loving it at my time at Amazon. I took last week off because of holiday, but I'm back at it today. Um, Everyone's super friendly, super nice, man. Um, one of the cool things about it is I can talk about my experience. I learned that from the onboarding. They encourage us to talk about our experiences. Can't talk about proprietary stuff, but generally speaking, everyone's been super dope, man. The onboarding process is really great. I've had good onboarding and bad onboarding. This is the best one I've had so far. There's really a focus on getting to meet people and sort of introduce yourself, which is really helpful when you work remotely. This is my first time starting a job remotely. Will the road make an appearance again? But I'm very happy, man. New Year's resolutions. Oh, I'm gonna do a video about that. I just haven't got around to it. I gotta. Do you want to be a tech lead? Yeah, I want to be. Listen, my goal is to always progress my career. Fat checks and progress my career. That's it. And tech lead is the next goal, right? I'd imagine. So, I'm usually pretty direct at like my 1-year reviews, and people ask like, what are your goals here? Bigger checks and career progression. Like that's it. But yeah, so skill factor. I mean, as far as C#, just look at what's in your area, what it is you want to do. I mean, JavaScript, I can always tell you, is a great place to get started, all that sort of stuff. So I don't know that I'll do another live stream before the New Year's, but Happy New Year's to everybody. If I don't see you, be safe. Think about what it is that you want to do in 2021. 2020 wasn't anything like I thought it was going to be. And I don't know that 2021 is going to be. I have an idea of what 2021 is going to look like. But honestly, with COVID and everything, who would I be kidding to say that it's going to look anything like I think it's going to? So I'm only trying to look 1-2 months into the future right now. And that doesn't mean I'm not going to have long-term goals, but I'm just trying to mentally prepare myself to know that what I think is going to transpire probably won't. With that all being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful and safe New Year's. Bye, guys.